So, so sometimes when I talk about my dating life, my relationship life, I'll jokingly laugh about how if I met my celebrity crushes, they would just put me in the friend zone and how sad that would make me. But in reality, and I think I've talked about this before, I actually don't believe in the friend zone. I don't think that the friend zone exists, in that not only have I observed multiple people who have developed very deep long-term relationships out of friendship, but also the idea of being trapped in the friend zone implies that it's this jail, that it's a stagnant, unpleasant state when the friendships I've had, particularly with men, have sometimes been immensely fulfilling and dynamic things where, you know, in some ways I've felt better looked after by my male friends and better able to care for them as well than I've ever felt with a romantic partner. And I think this is because within romantic relationships, people can sometimes be so incredibly selfish that they become sometimes their own issues can so utterly overwhelm them that they lose the ability to be helped and to help others. Whereas when I found when I'm in a friendship with somebody, I find that I'm freed from that, like that both parties really are freed from having to play out the standard dynamics that would go with a romantic relationship, and there is a greater freedom to simply look at, well, what does this situation need right now? And I suppose part of it is because that we expect more of romantic relationships. We expect them to provide a kind of security and safety net. And so it's, very easy for us to be let down and hurt by the moments where inevitably romantic relationships will fall short. Whereas in friendship, people don't come to it with as much expectations in the first place typically, so whatever you get, you can take pleasure in. And certainly sometimes I have felt frustrated with my friendships because sometimes people don't connect with me as much as I wish they would. And I've found that the wonderful thing about friendships though is you can have an infinite number of them. So even if currently you feel dissatisfied with the amount of social interaction you have or with the amount of attention you're being paid, you can simply locate more friendships until eventually you have enough for you to feel comfortable and at peace. And, I feel that for the most part in my life, I have reached that point where a, I nearly have a sufficient number of friendships for me to feel contented and fulfilled where I am. And yeah, I mean that isn't to say that I wouldn't like more friendships. Where I can have more fulfilling friendships, I would like to have them, of course. And it is the case that sometimes I'll have a friendship that to me seems fulfilling, and it won't, you know what I mean? It'll sort of fall away for a bit, and then I'll need something to fill the space. And I like to think that it's not one-sided, that I also benefit the other person by being friends with them. And so just first of all, the thing I want to say is that you know friendship isn't a life sentence. You just because somebody says that you are their friend, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will never have a romantic involvement in you or interest in you. And I'll also say that friendship is not torture. It's not boring. It you get out of it what you put in, and it can be just so helpful. And I realize that sounds like a summation, but I should expand on why I think they're so helpful as well. In practice, and that is that I mean I'm somebody who was trying to get married onwards of age 5, so you know I spent much of my life regarding men as these mysterious beings who could who had the power to deliver me immense, pleasure and joy, and simply refused to. But the outcome, of me forming as many friendships with men as I have within the past few years is that I've learned a lot about how they actually think. As in, they're not the sociopathic monsters that I was raised to believe that they are. They are more like giant frightened boys a lot of the time. And, they present outer shells of adulthood a lot of the time. And that isn't to say that all men are immature, I don't mean that. What I mean is that they have a kind of vulnerability, perhaps behind the harder exteriors that they put forward. And, certainly it remains the case that in my dating life I still tend to, if a man is failing to meet my needs, I tend to become angry rather than sympathetic, because of course I've tried taking the route of being sympathetic, and what I find is that they start to walk all over me instead of treating me with respect after a while. And so I do find it's necessary to insist upon my way to some extent. Uh, but yeah, there is, I think there is a good thing in not regarding somebody as being antagonistic if they're not, if that makes any sense. If you're walking around believing that the opposite sex is trying to torture you, then necessarily having them tell you that they'd like to be friends with you, or just in general, if your game is about having your needs met by the opposite sex rather than simply talking to them normally, you're going to have problems. You're going to miss out on the bigger picture. And yeah, so I feel like friendship gets a bad rap as far as the dating world is concerned. I feel like we should not assume that, you start out in the boring friendship and then you evolve to this wonderful romantic relationship. Sometimes it's better to go the other way around and to go from having a dysfunctional romantic relationship to having a functional friendship with someone. Or, you know, even just having a friendship with somebody at all can just be so important and vital as a connection, and so health-giving. Because, yeah, the male friends that I have become these sort of mentors that I can talk to sometimes when I'm having relationship troubles, and they sort of, intentionally or not, sort of counsel me through it by lending me their perspective sometimes, or, even some of them are very emotionally supportive and offer me hugs and empathy, and, you know, I mean, that obviously they're not all that way, but, some are like that, and I quite like that. It's been very healing for me to have so many friendships. And, I still have female friends, of course. I have a few. Not as many as I have male friends, for better or worse. But yeah, it's just, for me, finding those friendships that I have has been so important to my ability to stay mentally well. And so I feel like if somebody in your life is saying, I don't want to be your boyfriend or girlfriend, I want to just, you know, be my own thing, do my own thing. I want to just have a friendship with you. You shouldn't take it hard. You shouldn't take it as bad news. I think you should take it as, okay, this is like a sort of empty, playground where we can fill it with whatever we want and do whatever we want there. Of course with each other's consent, but, yeah, just within friendship, I think there is freedom. I think there is freedom. And I feel, I feel like people will be able to get more out of friendship if they come to understand that friendship can be better. That it can be, yeah, sometimes the better form of relationship in general.